10 years after my parents stood in our kitchen and chose my sister over me. A letter landed in my Chicago mailbox, saying I owed $340,000 on a bank guarantee signed in handwriting that looked exactly like mine. Here's what none of them knew when they signed my name. They picked the one person in the family trained to read every line they ever wrote. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where quiet people finally tell the stories their families hoped they'd keep to themselves. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a like on this video. It helps me bring you more unbelievable true stories every week. The story: I'm Olivia Anderson. I'm 28. I live in Lincoln Square in Chicago, in an apartment small enough to clean in an hour. I run at 5:30. I make one good cup of coffee. Then I go to work and find money that people swear doesn't exist. I'm a forensic accountant. I audit liars for a living. I just never expected to open a file on my own family. The letter came on a Tuesday from First Meridian Community Bank of Marion Falls, Ohio. Notice of default. Demand upon guarantor. I had personally guaranteed business loans for Anderson Comfort Heating and Air, my father's company, in default. The bank wanted $340,000 and it gave me 30 days. Attached was the guarantee. Signature of guarantor, Olivia R. Anderson. I stared at it a long time. The slant was right. The little loop on the O was right. It was my handwriting the way a wax figure is a person, accurate enough to fool anyone who never loved the real thing. I signed my own name on the back of the envelope just to be sure I still knew how. 2 signatures side by side. One was a lie, and I was the only person alive who could say which. I hadn't spoken to my parents in 10 years. Hadn't seen my sister since the night she pulled the pin on our family. Marion Falls is the kind of Ohio town where the hardware store knows your grandfather's middle name. My father, Frank, ran Anderson Comfort Heating and Air for 30 years. His name on the softball banner, on Little League jerseys, on half the furnace stickers in the county. My sister Madison was the display window. Homecoming queen, a pageant sash in the closet, a laugh that got her free things from cashiers. Her photos climbed the staircase, one frame per triumph. I was the sturdy one. Straight A's that got a nod at dinner and never made it to the wall. My mother, Susan, kept the company books at the kitchen table and kept the family story everywhere else. Money flowed where the owners believed the return was, and so did everything else. There was one person whose accounting worked differently: my grandmother Ruth. When she died, 2 years before everything broke, she left each granddaughter one thing. What she left me is the reason I got thrown away. She left $38,000 in a custodial account for my education, my mother named as custodian until I came of age. She left both of us the lake cottage on Miller Pond, for the girls, someday. I had the Ohio State brochures. I had a spreadsheet where tuition and the fund finally met. 3 weeks after graduation, financial aid asked for a current statement. I rode my bike to the bank. Balance, $6,112. Bled out withdrawal by withdrawal over 14 months, every slip signed by the custodian of record, my mother's handwriting. That same spring, Madison's boutique, Mason M., had its grand reopening downtown. New sign, ribbon, cake. Nobody asked how a store that never sold anything kept getting reborn. That night at dinner, I put the folded bank statement next to the mashed potatoes and asked my mother why Grandma Ruth's fund had $61 in it. My father looked at the paper the way he looked at a furnace he already knew was cracked. Madison didn't flinch. "Grandma's money is family money," she said. The boutique was an investment in all of us. I could go to school anytime community colleges exist. I was always the practical one. I'd land on my feet. I looked at my parents and waited for someone to say the obvious thing. Nobody did. Then I said the word stealing, and the temperature dropped 10 degrees. Madison stood up slowly, pushed her chair in like punctuation, and looked at our parents. "Mom and Dad, you choose. Either she leaves this house or I do." Nobody laughed. My father cleared his throat and said, "Olivia, maybe it's best you get a head start on being independent." You've always been good at that. 18 years old, 3 weeks past graduation, and he turned my report cards into an eviction notice in one sentence. My mother brought me 2 trash bags, the good kind, the thick ones. She pressed 2 20s into my hand, then took one back for gas. On the porch, I asked my father the only question I had left. Why her every time? We put everything where the return was, he said. The storm door clicked shut. Upstairs, Madison watched me drag my life to the curb, then pulled the curtain, not slammed, pulled gently, like closing a display case. I walked a mile and a half to my Aunt Carol's and slept on her couch. Nobody from Marion Falls ever came looking for me. I didn't know yet that they'd never actually let me go. 2 months on Carol's couch, a room above a laundromat, dishes, then waitressing at a diner off the interstate, community college at night. Accounting, because numbers had already proven they were the only thing in my life that wouldn't lie to me. A transfer on scholarship, a degree, a CPA exam finished in Chicago on May 12, 2021, a date I remember the way other women remember weddings. A fraud examiner certification. A junior seat at a Chicago firm under a partner named Daniel Webb, who read my resume and asked who taught me to work like this. Nobody, I said, the truest answer I ever gave in an interview. And through it all, some part of me kept mailing every diploma to Marion Falls in my head, still hoping for a deposit back. A Christmas card came in 2019, 4 lines about the weather. I read it 11 times and didn't answer. I called that healing. For 10 years, I believed they'd simply written me off. The letter on my counter said something worse. They'd been using my name the whole time. Mid-story pause. If you're invested in Olivia's story so far, take a quick second to share this video with a friend. Now, let's see what happens next. I called First Meridian. There wasn't one loan, there were 3, all from 2021, stacked like sandbags. The largest carried a federal small business backing. Combined default, $340,000. Every notice had gone to my parents' address on Route 9. The first time anyone looked for the real Olivia Anderson was after the default, when a skip tracer found me in about a day. Then the officer told me something that stopped my pen. My co-guarantors were also in default. Frank Anderson, Susan Anderson, Madison Anderson. The whole family, holding hands on the same sinking paper, with one signature among them belonging to a ghost wearing my name. I hired a lawyer, Rachel Donovan, who laid out the road. Police report, an identity theft affidavit, a sworn statement disputing the signatures. Straightforward, except that filling out those forms meant naming names under oath, meaning my mother. I asked for time I didn't really have, and for 3 days those blank forms sat on my table like a verdict waiting for a judge to show up. While they sat there, I pulled every public record with the Anderson name on it. Supplier liens against the company going back 4 years. A judgment from a Columbus parts distributor. The house on Route 9 refinanced twice, nearly to the studs. And Mason M wasn't one business, it was 3, each born, drowned, and quietly renamed. Every collapse of Madison's dream had been patched with company money, and when the company ran dry, it borrowed, using my name. I lined up the dates. The largest, federally backed loan funded the 3rd week of May 2021. The same week Mason M celebrated its 3rd grand reopening. My parents beaming under a new awning, the church bulletin called, "The hardest working family in Marion Falls." My tuition had bought the first awning. My signature had apparently bought the 3rd. My mother called that same day. 10 years, and I'd never changed her contact name. "Sweetheart," she said, warm as ever, like the porch light had never gone off. "A misunderstanding at the bank, nothing serious, just a little paper to sign." "Who signed my name, Mom?" The line went quiet exactly as long as it takes to choose a lie. Then she pivoted to my father's bad knees, his stress, and asked if I'd really let strangers at a bank tear the family apart over a formality. The next morning, my boss called me into a new matter meeting. A fraud examination out of Ohio, Anderson Comfort Heating and Air. I recused myself on the spot, in front of the partner, and Daniel Webb walled me off before lunch. But as I left, he said, without looking up, "Banks don't hire people like us for bookkeeping errors." A bank had smelled forgery and started paying specialist rates for proof. I demanded my own copies of the loan files. 3 fat folders arrived. I spread them across my kitchen table and read my family's finances like an autopsy, one with my baby pictures in it. I reached the big loan's signature page, executed before a notary in Marion Falls, dated May 12, 2021. I didn't need my calendar, but I opened it anyway. CPA exam, final section, 8 a.m., downtown Chicago, 300 miles away. Check-in photo, palm scan, seat number, timestamp. On the single most documented morning of my life, someone in Ohio held a pen the way I hold a pen and swore to be me. Then I hit the collateral schedule. Grandma Ruth's cottage on Miller Pond was pledged in these files too. I drove to Ohio, checked into a motel by the highway exit. My parents staged coffee cake and small talk, then my father called it formalities. "Your mother's handled everyone's paperwork for 30 years. Confirm it's fine," my mother said. Smooth as a butter knife. "Fine like Grandma's fund was fine?" I asked, and watched his jaw set while nobody said Madison's name. On the fridge, a glossy card for Mason M's 4th grand reopening. 10 years, $340,000, $1 federal investigation, and the machine was still open for business. In the garage, my father talked about thin margins and competitors, then landed on his rehearsed line. "A family is like a company, Olivia. One engine has to carry everybody. You feed the engine first. That's not favorites, that's management." Back in 2016, he said, I could already stand on my own. Madison couldn't. "We put everything where the return was," the sentence that had rung in my skull for a decade. He wasn't lying. He believed exiling me had been a sound decision that had, look at me now, paid off. At Mason M's 4th incarnation, Madison hugged me before I could answer, gave me the tour, then got to it over tea. Unlike our parents, she didn't pretend. "You've got no husband, no kids, no family depending on you. For us, this is survival. For you, it's a Tuesday. Sign the paper and everybody keeps their lives. Grandma's fund," she said, "kept this family's name alive when the store needed it. And look at you, you made something of yourself anyway." It worked out for everyone. The next morning, in a booth off Route 12 without her makeup, she told me what it was like to be the whole plan, required to be magic, never allowed to fail. For 1 minute I saw the person Marion Falls built, and some part of her knew exactly what she was. Then the saleswoman rose back up her spine. "That's why it has to be you. You're the only one strong enough to carry this." Even her confession had a payment plan attached. A week later, a lawyer's letter arrived with a draft ratification, my sworn affirmation that I'd authorized the 2021 guarantees. The cover letter added the sweetener. My parents regretted the estrangement, hoped for reconciliation, invited me to Thanksgiving, and intended to update their estate plans to reflect my place in the family. I sat with that letter and a pen on top of it for the better part of an hour. My hand didn't move, but I won't pretend it didn't want to. That week took the last 2 things tying me to hope. My friend Jenna read the letter and said it plainly. "They didn't invite you home. They priced you in." My Aunt Carol called to say the version going around Marion Falls was that Frank and Susan's ungrateful girl got rich in Chicago and came back to kick her family while they were down. Nobody in that version stole or forged anything. Carol believed me, she'd seen the trash bags, but when I asked if she'd say so out loud, she went quiet. "I live here, honey." Then Rachel called. The bank's fraud unit had taken over the file. An investigator wanted me on the record with counsel present. There were 2 chairs left, the affiance chair and the accomplice's chair, and my whole family was praying I'd sit in the second one. Rachel laid out the doors. Sign the ratification, and the case would soften into a family squabble. But I'd have made a false statement to a federally insured bank, in writing, forever. Tell the truth under oath, and I'd put my mother's name in a federal file. There is no third door, Rachel said. I told her I'd been looking for the third door for 10 years, the one where they love you back without you having to lie. The forensic work finished that summer. A subpoenaed notary journal and county deed records completed the picture. My father's poker buddy had notarized the guarantee. His journal told me who was willing, not who held the pen. The document examiner matched the tremor in the forged signature to the same hand behind the 14-month bleed of my college fund. And in 2019, a quitclaim deed, signed and notarized, while I sat in an evening class 300 miles away, had signed away my half of Grandma Ruth's cottage so it could be pledged as collateral. My mother hadn't just chosen my sister that night on the porch. She'd been signing me away, one page at a time, for years. 2 days before my interview with the fraud unit, Madison texted for the first time in a decade. My father was in the hospital, chest pains, come. I drove 5 hours and stood in a cardiac ward hallway, close enough to hear my parents through the door. She owes us, Sue, my father said. We raised her. Roof, food, 18 years, one signature. She owes this family that much. On a heart monitor beating 70 beats a minute, I was still a receivable. I left a box of cookies at the nurse's station and drove back through the dark. Somewhere around Gary, Indiana, I stopped hoping. It felt like taking off wet clothes. Monday morning, I signed the truth, a police report, a federal identity theft affidavit, a sworn declaration. On each one, a box asking who did this, and I typed in order Susan Anderson, Frank Anderson, Madison Anderson. Stapled behind it, the May 12th signature page, my time-stamped exam record, the notary's fictional journal entry, the voided quitclaim. 3 hours of careful questions from the investigator, and I gave exact, complete answers without a drop of extra vinegar. Bitterness ruins more good witnesses than perjury ever does. Rachel warned me at the elevator, once this goes into the system, you cannot unname them. I know what a signature means, I told her. I'm the only one in my family who does. 3 weeks later came the mediation, a glass office on the 11th floor in Columbus, a table long enough to seat a jury. The bank's lawyers arrived first, with the investigator who now nodded at me like a colleague. Then my family came in, and 10 years hadn't prepared me for the arithmetic of time on their faces. My father moving like his knees were negotiating each step, my mother gray at the temples. Madison in full armor that was suddenly load-bearing. The mediator explained that a criminal referral's weight would depend considerably on my sworn testimony. Every head turned to me. Their lawyer slid the ratification down the table one more time, and then my mother stood and said the words I'd waited 10 years to hear. We were wrong. About the fund, about that night, about all of it. We have missed you every single day. Your room is still your room. Come home, Olivia. My father nodded, wet-eyed. Madison said one word, small as I'd ever heard from her. Please. I pulled the ratification toward me, picked up the pen, and set it down beside the document, not on it. Then I laid out my own 2 pages. The guarantee sworn in Marion Falls on May 12, 2021, beside the exam record placing me in Chicago that same morning, palm print and timestamp. 10 years ago, somebody in this family said you choose. You chose. I've lived inside your choice for 10 years and I built a good life there. So today, this one is mine. This time I choose. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Madison's chair skidded back, saying my name, saying be reasonable. My father barked my name like I was 16 past curfew. I didn't raise my voice at all. I told the mediator my affidavit stands, told the bank's counsel I'd cooperate fully with prosecutors, and told the family's lawyer I would not be signing his document, not today, not ever. I sign my name for a living, I said. It is the one thing in this family that was never for sale. You taught me everything gets put where the return is. You just never imagined I'd learn it. The recess emptied and nobody came back. The bank released me from the guarantees and treated my signatures as forged. My name's legally, formally, was mine again. In the parking garage elevator, Madison caught me one last time, no armor left. You've killed us. You know that? And I answered in a level voice it took 10 years and $340,000 to find. No, Madison, I just stopped paying your bills. The doors closed on her face. I sat in my car and cried for 10 ugly minutes, freer than I'd ever been, and more orphan than I'd ever been, both true at once. The consequences arrived slowly, like winter. My mother pleaded guilty to making false statements to a federally insured lender, 3 years probation, restitution that will follow her for life. My father took one count tied to the applications, 4 months. Then home confinement. And the company that carried his name on banners and furnace stickers for 30 years was liquidated to pay First Meridian. Madison's charge came from a different direction. Wire fraud, traced through Mason M's 3 corpses, 10 months in a federal camp, the 4th store gone before its first anniversary. The notary surrendered his commission. The quitclaim on Grandma Ruth's cottage was voided as forgery, and it came back to what her paper had always said, for the girls, someday. It's been a year. Marion Falls still tells its own version. Depending on the pew, I'm either the one who finally did what someone had to, or the cold daughter who put her own mother on probation over paperwork. I've stopped drafting corrections in my head. A town that needs its story keeps its story, and my name isn't collateral for anyone's anymore. 6 months ago, a letter came from a federal camp in Madison's handwriting. A few lines, no pitch, no request, which for her is a kind of nakedness. She'd been thinking about Grandma's kitchen. It ended, "You were the only one who ever got out clean. I haven't answered. I'm not ready, and I've stopped pretending readiness has a due date." But I didn't throw it away. It lives in Grandma Ruth's cedar recipe box on my counter, the one thing I asked for when the cottage sold. My share of that sale sat for a while until I understood what it was for, and then I put it where the return was. The Ruth Anderson Fund, 1 tuition award a year. For an accounting student with no family behind them. No essay about gratitude required. The first recipient was 19, sleeping on a friend's couch, working diner mornings. When she asked what she needed to do to deserve it, I heard my grandmother's voice come out of my own mouth. "You don't earn a seat at this table, child. You just sit," she cried. I held it together until the parking lot. People still ask if I've forgiven my family. Forgiveness was never a door I was holding open for them. It turned out to be the morning I stopped keeping the books on everything they owed me and everything I'd paid, because love isn't a ledger. And the day I finally closed, that account was the day I got free. If someone ever made you pay for a seat at their table, take this as your sign. You're allowed to walk away and keep your name. Outro/call to action. Wow, that was an intense one. If you made it to the end, drop a comment below and let me know. Would you have signed the paper to save them, or did Olivia do the exact right thing? Don't forget to subscribe to Calm Drama Stories, leave a like, and share this with someone who needs a reminder that they don't have to carry weight that isn't theirs. See you in the next story.